Braves get a big win on senior night. Pretty sweet. So let's get to some Braves talk. The calendar officially turns over to March. The Braves get a big win, and it is officially gut check time in college basketball. Welcome to Braves Talk, everybody. It's the Iceman, Matt Freites, and across from me, the pals, Coach and OG. Welcome, guys. Happy Friday.
Iceman, Dad, OG, and Braves Nation. Welcome to Braves Talk. This is exciting. We've got the season finale coming up on Sunday against the Drake Bulldogs, but I think that we're going to spend some time here talking about what happened Wednesday night, a clean sweep of the Southern Illinois Salukis, which is always a good one to get. No matter how good that program is, it's nice to assert our dominance. And we got to celebrate 4 seniors, which was really exciting. And we got to see a great basketball game, and one that we were kind of pining for a little bit, right, as fans, one where we came out and separated ourselves and had a little breathing room in the second half, which was really nice.
How's it going, Rick?
Yep. Yeah, Wednesday's game was what we were hoping we would get when we played the Birds last Saturday. So
did not happen, but a win's a win.
Hey, W's a W. It's in the left side of the column. That's where we won them. So an exciting game coming up this weekend.
Absolutely.
Even though we got third and they're going to be second, there's a lot to play for in that game alone. A possible, if you want to even talk about it or think about it, we go in there and we take care of business. We're not going to go to the second seed, but that might open the door for conversation for a possible NIT bid, depending on how we play and such. So
definitely a lot to look forward to for sure coming in. But let's talk about Wednesday. So Wednesday I was sick, but I was able to watch the first half, and I was able to see how Coach Wardle, started all the seniors, which I hear, Rick, you were not a big fan of, but I think it worked out. Team jumps out to a big lead, and you get to see the strength of the team as the first half goes on. It was a very physical first half, but I felt like they were playing great inside in the paint. The team is paced by Darius Hannah, who has a great night, 22 points, and I got to see him hit his first 3 of the year, which was pretty awesome. So that was a fun little moment, and probably one of those oh no, oh yes moments, because it goes up and you're like, what is he doing? But it was a fun moment, I thought, and the broadcast team did a pretty good job of highlighting that moment. Duke and Malavai each in double figures. Malavai has a big night with 6 blocks, highlighting his potential candidacy for Defensive Player of the Year. And Brad, as you said, it was a physical game. So why don't you give me some of your pointers from the game as you were watching it at home? Or, excuse me, what you guys were at the game.
Sure. So I told you that early on, I sent you a text. I said, I think there's a chance this thing could get a little chippy, because there was a level of physicality early on. And I think, right now, right, the book's out kind of on Bradley, that if, sort of the a strategy that a lot of teams are using against the Braves is to come out and be extremely physical and to try to impose their will physically against us. And SIU did that. And I was very impressed with how we handled it, because we did not let SIU drag us down into their style of play. We didn't let them drag us down into kind of a mucked up matchup like maybe we saw against Illinois State. And we asserted ourselves with just superior play, period. And that was great to see, because getting caught up in the emotion of, this isn't like an Illinois State rivalry, but it's always a hotly contested game. And, being an in-state team and, having a lot of battles over the years with these guys, it's easy to get caught up in the emotion of it, especially being senior night early on. Things are, emotions are running high. It's a game that you got to get for seeding purposes, and to kind of keep our composure and just focus on the things that we're going to win the basketball game was really, really impressive, in my opinion.
Yeah. And to the starting lineup, I wasn't necessarily against it. I understand it. You know, I just said, man, that is a very interesting lineup to bring out here. Just, I mean, who we had, the positions they played, such. But hey, kudos to them. They came out strong. It was probably one of our best starts in half the season. So kudos to them. Really appreciate that. And then when they brought
certainly the best start since we started this podcast. I'll say
yeah,
that.
yeah. And then when they brought in, more of the regulars, we kind of lulled off a little bit and let him get back in the game somewhat, but then we settled in and took care of business.
Yeah, it was an impressive first half anyway. Like I said, I was under the weather, so I fell asleep, but I'm counting this in the win column, gentlemen, as my first win watching the Bradley Braves on television. So I'm very excited about that. But it was nice to see. Remember last week how you guys kind of gave me a little shit because I said, oh, we'd like to have an easy game. And easy was the wrong word, but a game in which they played really well, didn't have to grind all that much the way that they did against the Birds. And they kind of got that as we're heading into the next game. So that's something that I'm not taking a victory lap per se, but it's what I was hoping to see. And I think the team got that much needed confidence. Now you're stacking wins on top of each other as we're heading into the regular season finale. And next week, of course, is Arch Madness. So there's a lot at stake here. And this is exactly the kind of win that they needed heading into the finale, in my opinion.
No, 100%. And I think there's kind of a narrative out there leading up to this final game against Drake that there's not much to play for. In terms of seeding, sure, there's not a seeding and overall placement to finish the season. There's nothing to play for in that regard. But I think when you want to look at overall resume, I believe it would be considered a quad one win for Bradley if they were to win this game at Drake, which would be great for any resume, whether it's to help improve the resume come NCAA tournament time if we win an Arch Madness, or if it's to give us a strong enough resume to get an at-large bid to the NIT. Either way, I think there's value there. And two, with the way we've been stacking wins on top of each other, you don't want to sort of get off track. I think you want to come out, you want to execute the things that we've been working on, you want to play within the system. It's more so and not practice. I don't want to say that, but you don't want to sit around and get rusty either, because you're not going to play until late next Friday night. And that's a long break for these guys. These guys haven't had a break like that since the season started. And so you don't want to get too complacent and too worried about resting. I think that you have to manage these situations very carefully to make sure that the team is at their best come tournament time. And something else I want to mention about the game, there was a little bit of chatter happening on X about the officials, and I thought all year that the officiating has been pretty mediocre, like consistently both ways. Honestly, it's not. It hasn't been like I don't think it's been the poor officiating has been skewed towards Bradley or anything. Of course, as fans, we're always every fan base feels like they're getting jobbed by the officials at some point in time. But like objectively, like I just think it's been pretty consistently mediocre. And to see, I think there was a Southern fan that made the comment, that we won because of the refs. Well, my man, like you can't lose by you can't lose by 20 points and blame the officials. If you lose by 3 or 4 and you want to say there was a call here or there that maybe changed the outcome of the game or change the trajectory of the game, that's fine. But you can't sit there and, I'm sure it's just caught up in the emotion. I probably would have been saying something similar, had the shoe bit on the other foot. But is there anything else? Is there any other profession in sports where you could, I'm not saying it's an easy job by any means, and I know that they have a hard time finding officials, which is probably the answer to this question. But is there any other profession where you can be so inconsistent and do a poor job and there appear to be no consequences
I can think of two.
And I feel politician and
a weatherman.
A weatherman, that's true.
Yes.
And I think that when you look at sports officiating in general, I feel like officiating basketball is very similar to the strike zone in baseball. It's just like almost purely subjective, purely judgment. And there's not a lot of black and white to it. Yeah, there's some very obvious out of bounds calls and things like that, but just the what gets called a foul, what doesn't get called a foul from end to end, and inevitably, almost always, they find a way to get the fouls close to even before halftime, no matter how big that disparity is in the first 10 minutes, and it seems to go the same way in the second half. It's just really, really interesting, and it's just been bad, truthfully.
Yeah. Real quick though about the weather guy. I was one. I was a weather specialist in the Air Force, so easy on us. There's a lot more to it than most people understand. Anyway, back on the officials. Go ahead. What are you
Hold
gonna
on.
say?
A meteorologist for sure. But Pat Sajak started as a weatherman, a guy who just points at a board and tells you what's going to happen. Meteorologist, I'm giving a lot of credit to because that's a science. They're actually studying it. But I could put a suit on and tell people what's going to go on if somebody tells me what to say. That's the distinction that I'm making. I'm not putting down weather people in general, but I am making this distinction over there is a science to it. I will tell you.
Yeah. Well, there is. Anyway, back to the officials. I think the post that I saw was someone said something about, would Bradley have as many wins if they weren't always getting calls from the officials? And my point is go back, look at every single stat of the games that Bradley has played. More often than not, as far as like free throws, we're shooting double-digit less amount of free throw attempts than our opponents have. In I ain't gonna say most cases, but a lot of cases that has been the case. It's either been that or maybe just, we've always been on the short stick, and then even with turnovers and such. But yeah, when it comes to fouls, yeah, we've always been the guy that's had more called on us than.
There's your homer take.
No. Here's the thing, though, right? And this is my opinion. We've talked about this on Iceman and Coach, and I've probably ranted about this everywhere. But when it comes to officiating, if there's something that triggers me the most, it is when people just automatically say officiating when a game doesn't go their way. Are there instances in which officials across the board miss plays? 100%. All you have to do is go to the NBA this past week to look at that, where the Knicks got away with one when the Pistons guy got tackled at half court. Nothing was called, and the Knicks end up getting the game-winning basket because, let's face it, the Knicks are more appealing than the 8-win Pistons, right? So these things are going to happen. But I get really triggered because there are fan bases, and I'm not even saying this is the Valley, but in general, who it's like, dude, you lost by 20, okay? Like, in no world would a bunch of fouls somehow aggregate to you then winning a game that you lost by 20 points. The Salukis lose by 5? Sure, you can go nitpick some of these calls. But over the course of a season, most of the time, the calls that are beneficial to a team and the calls that go against a team are going to zero themselves out. A lot of times it comes down to when they're called. And we've talked about that on this pod before, where it seems like Bradley is getting calls going against them at the worst possible time. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the officiating's all bad, but inconsistent officiating has been something we've seen plaguing sports for the last, 5 years probably, even at the professional level.
And fans are sort of to blame for that to some degree because of the treatment of these people. I think we do lose sight of the fact that these are human beings that are doing a job and in most cases probably not making a lot of money to do it, especially at the high school and lower levels. I'm sure these college guys get, make a decent amount of money, but it's a lot of times it's a labor of love and giving back to the sport and being a part of it because it's not a very desirable profession to get into because of how you are treated and that you are the only people in the arena that like both teams fans are likely actively rooting against at all times. And I will say at the same time, it's very rare that you see a foul be called and the coach of the team that it's called against isn't chirping about it. And it would get frustrating that every single time you call a foul, you got to listen to the coach piss and moan about the call or the player
Or Rick.
Show his body language about the call or whatever else. I do think there's a time and place to let the officials know maybe that you're unhappy about a call that was made. But and maybe they've just been desensitized to the lashings that they get. And Josh says officiating has been pretty decent this year, all things considered, save the Drake game at home, which was some of the worst we've seen in many years. And, I've said before, I'm not a an expert on the X's and O's of basketball and specifically maybe what does constitute as a foul and doesn't. There, our buddy Kevin who sits behind us is pretty knowledgeable, and there's times where I'll see a call and I'll think that it's not a foul, and he's like, "Oh, it's definitely a foul." And I trust his judgment because he knows more than I do in that regard. So there was one the other night where you were said it wasn't a foul. We got called for a moving screen, and you said it wasn't a foul. We're both like, "That's definitely a foul," or whatever. But
Yeah,
I was
it's
like, "You're the only
subjective.
person in the building that doesn't think that's a foul." But
It happens though.
yeah,
Like it's not a Rick thing. It's not a Homer thing. Sometimes we want a result to happen, and so we kind of, I don't want to say delude ourselves, but we think like, oh, that was definitely it. And then when we go back and we look at it, we're like, all right, you know what? In the heat of the moment, it is what it is. But I don't want to harp on the officiating because that's taking away from Bradley's win, in my opinion. But a couple things that I took away from this. Obviously, Malavai had a great game defensively. And Brad, you said to me offline today that he should be in position, if not winning Defensive Player of the Year in the Valley.
yeah, I would think so. If you look at the statistics, look at the full body of work, I don't know how you could not give it to him. Maybe people would feel like, well, that's just the easy thing to do, but the guy is such a model of consistency on the defensive end, and what he does from blocks to steals and just locking down the guy that he is guarding. That's not something that's not really a statistic, right? An official statistic of how many points you give up. But I guarantee you, man, that I'm sure he's probably had a bad game here or there, but he has. I know that Jason King got the best of him a little bit in the Indiana State game in Terre Haute, I believe, or maybe the one at home, maybe both of them. I tried to put those two games out of my head, but he usually is tasked with defending the other team's best player, and the overwhelming majority of the time, he shuts that guy down, and that guy is not a factor at all. Now, seems like we struggle at times to contain number 2 or 3 on their team when that happens, but we always, he usually locks down that guy that we say, we're not going to let this guy beat us. And that's thanks to Malavai that doesn't happen more often than not.
And Rick,
Yeah.
the turnovers, less than 10 turnovers again, 6 turnovers. This to me is the sign that this team is poised to make a run in Arch Madness. What do you think?
Yeah. Their focus on details, making the extra pass, when it's there. They still every now and then will throw a pass to make you scratch your head. But I don't know if you've seen it. There was almost back to back our guards, and I believe it was Hickman and Duke, but one did a behind the back pass to the other, and then almost immediately another behind the back pass back to the other guy. And I'm like, okay, that's a little fancy. You don't see that very often at all. But no, yeah, the turnovers, yeah, keeping them in check. Those and keeping our fouls down,
Yes.
because we only had where's our fouls at?
Well,
19.
I mean, yeah.
That's still a little hefty, but Southern had 18. So
Thing
they always
is-
find a way to get it even.
yep.
Yeah, but the thing is, the Braves scored 22 points off turnovers compared to, I think it was 6 for the Salukis. That to me is, again, when you're taking advantage of getting the turnover, because sometimes you are able to get the ball away, stop possession, but you don't get that bucket. And Brad, you talked about that last week, remember, with the game against ISU, where it's like you just want them to get a stop, get a bucket, get a stop, get a bucket. And it was like they would get a stop, not a bucket. And here, when you're actually able to get the transition going and you're able to score off of those opportunities, that leads to these types of wins. And that to me leads to momentum. And so before we get into the Drake game, though, I want to talk about the seniors a little bit. And Brad, you're familiar with them and you listed out some of the accolades or some of the things you want to talk about. So I want to let you start and highlight the 4 seniors that were highlighted at Carver the other night.
Yeah, so we'll start with Connor Linke, right? So we've talked a lot about him the last couple of weeks. He's come on, played some meaningful, productive minutes for the team. And I don't want to go on too, we really talked about him a lot last time, so I won't go on a ton, but just in general, the character and that he has shown remaining mentally engaged and to be a good teammate through, 4 years of not playing a whole bunch, right? And accepting his role And now when he's getting an opportunity, he's really taking advantage of it and showing that, you don't come in and do what he's done if you're not locked in and participating in practice every day and putting the work in. And to see that, even knowing that, his time may never come, the dude still showed up every day and put the work in to get better just in case, right? Right. Hey, if my number's called, I'm going to be ready. And he was, and he has been, which has been outstanding. And he does, I believe he has a COVID year he could use next year. I'm not sure that we're expecting him to necessarily be on scholarship next year, but that's just kind of the general speculation. Um, I'm not sure what his intentions are moving forward, but uh, he's been a staple to the program and just very consistent and just the stability that he's given things. So this over the last 4 years, this team's been through a couple of they've been on some bumpy roads here and there, and you got to have high character guys like that that can hold things together. Gonar Bilyu. So Gonar, I think there might have been some higher expectations when he came in, but things didn't quite pan out, and really like we've got a lot of quality depth at his position on the roster, which does make it tough to get on the floor. And so that's another guy that you can tell his teammates love him by the way they act towards him. It's really hard um to fake that stuff, I think, especially when you spend as much time as these guys do together. It's really hard to fake your genuine appreciation and admiration for somebody and respect. And it's obvious that he has that. We forget that these guys have to practice against somebody during the week, right? There's someone that's got to come out and push these guys in practice and make them put forth an effort. Yeah, you're not going to simulate, the Darnell Brodies of the world in practice or Tucker DeVries in practice, but you got guys that are going to show up and they're going to give you everything they've got to help get you better and help get you prepared to play. And there's no doubt, I'm sure, that Gonar has done that. And again, to remain positive and locked in through, in times where others may get discouraged and maybe lose focus, says a lot about the type of young man that he is. Darius Hannah, another guy that's got a COVID year that he could take. I think everyone is hoping that Darius returns next season. And again, we're going to talk. I'm going to say this word a lot throughout these four character, man. His sophomore year, he did not play very much at all. And I mean, he played more his freshman year than he did his sophomore year. And, a lot of people were wondering, why is Darius not playing very much? And I don't know that, there's probably people out there that maybe have the answers, but I think that, again, some of it was probably the depth of his position at the time. But it seemed, too, from the outside looking in, that maybe the coaching staff felt like Darius had some learning to do. And had some work that he needed to put in to get himself ready to come in and be a contributor to the team. And my goodness, did he do that? He came in the last year and was, immediately an impact player for this team. And, he was able to take on, an important role, but a lesser role due to having Rink and Malavai out there with him. This year, you have no Rink. He's the guy, right? He is the five man and undersized most nights, but definitely not out athleted for sure. We've seen his explosive dunks and everything, and the way he's come along, his free throw shooting really improved over the last few years. I mean, I know that it kind of used to be, people chuckle when he made one because he struggled a lot early in his career, and he's really improved from the line. And again, it shows that these guys have bought into the coaching staff, because you're not going to stay somewhere where if you're not playing, you're not going to stay somewhere where you feel like the coaches aren't invested in what you're doing, and in you as a person and a basketball player. And they've obviously did that. And Darius was bought in, and he's been a tremendous asset to the team. And again, like I said, he could come back next season. I think we all hope he does. But I'll say this: Darius has put in his time, right? He's put in 4 great years. He's going to graduate in the spring, and he's earned the right to do whatever he chooses is best for him and whatever he wants to do. And I can tell you, there's no hard feelings from me if Darius decides to go have a crack at a Power 5 school that comes calling, and see how he can stack up against the big boys. You're not going to catch any flack from me about that, because Darius has, like I said, he is not served his time, but Darius gave this university everything he had for these 4 years, and we're not done yet, but he's earned the right to make this decision for himself. And then finally, obviously, Malavai, who came back this year, had a 5th year of eligibility, decided to stick around. Glad he did, because I think he needed a guy like him to, who knows, maybe some of, losing a couple of the guys early in the season could have gone a completely different direction if you don't have some of the veteran leadership that this team has had. And Malavai is a big part of that. It seems like from a distance, seems like the happiest guy that there could be. Seems incredibly happy, positive, and a great teammate. And he just seems so even keeled, which is, you have to appreciate, because while we may think that we might wish he would seem more aggressive at times, I'm sure he is competitive as can be, but the ability um, to not get on that emotional roller coaster and experience those highs and lows is extremely valuable, because you see a lot of these guys, I think they get in their own heads once in a while, and they get themselves in mental ruts. And Malavai just seems to be happy to be out there playing the game with his teammates. And, his accomplishments as a player are well documented. And he's going to have more accolades he's going to receive before this season is all said and done. And hopefully he's a guy that can have a successful career internationally at the professional level. I think he will, and it'll be fun to follow him after he moves on. But, these are 4 very high character young men who have contributed in different ways to the program. And it's going to be tough to see him move on, but we're grateful at the same time for everything that they've contributed.
Yeah, I'm not as long-winded as him. So I'm just going to lump all 4 of these wonderful seniors into one little thing here. And that from me, appreciate your time, your efforts, your sacrifices in representing the university, as well as all 4 of you have, to come out and entertain the masses each and every game. And as Brad said, the character is very high. Those who stick around the university and play for Coach Wardle will always have high character. I think that's been proven time and time again. So, but congratulations, and I wish nothing but the best for each and every one of you. And yes, I do hope Darius Hannon does come back next year. I know he said he will play. We just hope he comes back here. If people knew and understood and can see the vision of what this team can be like next year, even many other teams in the Valley, I got to include them. If everybody in the Valley came back that can come back, the Missouri Valley will be an even stronger basketball conference than it is this year.
And Rick doing the dad thing, lumping all of his kids into one, not picking a favorite when he absolutely has a favorite. So congratulations to you, Rick, on being dad of the year once again. So congratulations to our seniors, and Brad said it all, Rick said it all, and we're not done yet. So let's move on to the Drake game we got coming up this weekend. Last regular season game, big rivalry. Obviously, the game at Carver last time was a tough loss, hoping to avenge that loss, but I do have a theory. Last year, the Braves, and you're sitting in front of that visual right now, take the regular season title. Drake ends up winning the war by winning in the conference tournament. Well, this could be the chance that I believe Bradley has to turn those tables a little bit. Even if they don't get a win in this game, they have the ability to get revenge on what happened last year in Arch Madness. And I think that this game right here is going to be the first stone in the foundation to doing that.
Yeah, it very well could be. And I think that it's always nice to beat one of the top teams. And maybe we are sitting here trying to pick and find things to feel like we're playing for. And I know we highlighted some of those things earlier at the beginning. I just want to see us build on what we've been doing and get ourselves right and in a position to compete next weekend. And I think we would all feel a little differently about this game if it wasn't Drake or maybe unless it was Indiana State. But I think if it was almost anyone else, we would, hey, let's go out there and let's just get through this thing healthy and get to next weekend. And I still do feel that way. I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot we're going to be able to take away from this game unless we come out and just look really poor.
Or really good.
Or really good, or just out. Yeah, we go out and just blow the doors off Drake. But then there's always going to be the question of, well, were they locked in, and everything else. But I just think that we forget too that these guys are highly competitive athletes, Division I athletes that want to win, and I expect to get everyone's best effort because you don't want to nurture an environment of complacency, and that's reason number one that I don't think we'll see any sort of complacency uh, going into this game. And so, it's going to be a good ball game, I think. And I don't know if we'd get the crowd, if we're going to get the crowd that we maybe would have gotten had Drake got knocked off by UIC the other night, and this game would have truly been for like the 2 seed, or if it were a battle for the league championship, obviously. But I think there'll be a strong Bradley contingent there. Drake fans do show up, so it should be a good environment and a good basketball game. And it'll be interesting to see where these two teams are right now against, let's call it, equal competition heading into the conference tournament.
Yeah. I believe that when we played them the first time, it was early in the Valley season, after the first of the year. And I think we were still trying to find our way defensively and on the boards. And especially defensively, I think we've done that. Sometimes we've been a little bit up and down on the rebounding, but I think these guys have a good grasp on, what this game can mean if they can go in there and get a win. So, just kind of like kicking back, we got third and we're just no, that's not gonna happen. That's not in Wardle's character. Hope it's not in anybody else's on that team. Let's go get a very impressive win. And because right now we're close enough in the net, we could leapfrog them. And that's where it opens up a little bit of conversation for the NIT.
Yeah.
So
all you want to see is consistency. You want to see a solid performance. Do not want to see a stinker. But Rick, you did mention that we have one game to go, and you mentioned how there's still a lot to play for. And in the Valley, slotted under Bradley, because Bradley's locked in at the 3 seed right now, you have UNI, SIU, and Belmont. They're all kind of tied with the same record. And ironically, UNI and SIU play each other. So there's going to be a little bit of jockeying for position. Those two teams have a lot to play for in terms of seeding. Belmont is going to host Evansville as we head into Arch Madness. And there is a lot going on right now. Even though there's one game left and Bradley is slotted into the 3rd seed, they have something to play for. And a lot of these teams that are right underneath them have a lot to play for because, Brad, as you like to say, every team in the Valley says, don't catch us in the tournament because we're dangerous.
Yeah. And for the record, I was perfect on my games Wednesday.
Congratulations.
Tuesday.
I don't have the fanfare, or else I'd play it for you here on the soundboard. But we can do that if you actually. Wait, I do have
the biggest one coming up Sunday, other than ours, is the Northern Iowa SIU game.
Yep,
and it's a road game for us, or for Northern Iowa. Yes, Northern Iowa has not played particularly great on the road, but there's intangibles. Maybe a hint more for Southern being senior night, and then also for both teams, they're playing for that number 4 spot. The loser goes to number 6. So, in that respect, I got to go with the more experienced coach, the more successful coach, the better athletic team. There's better players on Northern Iowa than there is, to me, on Southern. But yet you still have to play 40 minutes of that game, at least, so, I think in this time of year, Jacobson, like I've repeated time and time again, he has his guys ready to play, and they've done that the last several games, even though they've been home game. So
well-coached teams are dangerous this time of year, no matter what their record is. And Next week, guys, we have Arch Madness. I think it starts on March 7th, and we have a couple of shows to go before we get there. So here to announce on Monday's show, we're going to have Matt McLean, who is I believe he's the play-by-play guy for Bradley's ESPN Plus team. He's going to come on and talk about Arch Madness. He is going to be at Arch Madness, so going to break that down with him, and hopefully we're going to get another show in right before the start of Arch Madness, maybe even get some super fans or some other folks on here to kind of talk about it from a fan perspective. We have not decided what we're going to do for Arch Madness just yet, because I know you guys might head down there and it may be a little bit much to go live every single day, but we kind of want to gauge what the fans are looking for. How many people are going to be down there? How many people are going to be even available to watch? What do you want to hear from us? So we're going to kind of gauge some interest on X and find out what you guys are looking for. Well, guys, we have one more game to go, but before we close out this episode, what do you guys have for the viewers right now?
Well, I'm just excited to find out what all the games end up being. And yeah, I'm going to pat myself on the back if everybody that I picked to win and the Northern Iowa hits that 4 spot. So, but that's probably the biggest one I think that there's even a question about is the UNI Southern game. Everybody else should win, my opinion.
What about you, Coach?
Yeah, so thank you again, everybody, for the support. Really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun to come on here and do this. And like Matt mentioned, we're hopeful to get some of you involved with this. And as we keep going, especially in the off season, man, we'll have a lot of opportunities to come on and talk about all kinds of stuff that you guys want to talk about. That's Bradley basketball related, recruiting, scheduling, conference realignment, all the fun stuff, right? Thank you. Looking forward to see how the game goes Sunday. You know, one of the most interesting things about that game, I think, for us, we've struggled with large 5 men like Brody, so it gives us a chance to maybe go try some things against one of those types of players, you know, and see how that works out leading the tournament. So we got to solve for that type of player because it's been one that's really hurt us. So I'm curious to see how we handle Brody and just, you know, obviously how the things pan out in the 4, 5, 6 slots. You know, those teams are going to be desperate to get a win because if they don't, you're going to play a really talented, just poorly coached UIC team that just took Drake to 3 overtimes. And if you win, you got to go through us. So as much as we sit here and worry about some other people, I guarantee you they're more worried about playing Bradley. And so I think you're going to get a great effort out of both those teams. Thank you again. I can't say it enough. Thank you so much. I appreciate the interactions on X and in the comment section here during the shows, at the games, wherever. Really appreciate it. It's been a blast. And go be you.
That's right. Next week is going to be a heater, folks. We're going to give you as much coverage as we can possibly do with family stuff and everything. But I want to thank you as well. If you want to find us on social media, if you're listening to this after the fact, X at Iceman and Coach, TikTok at INC Sports, Facebook, INC Sports, and of course, MattyIceMedia.com for the other podcasts that we have. Let's go, Bradley. We'll see you next week. And this is Braves Talk.